everybody, and welcome to the Maria Goncalves podcast. I'm your host, Maria Goncalves, and today we have a special guest all the way from British Columbia, Canada. So, welcome, Alan.
Thank you. Hey, by the way, thanks a lot for paying for the business class to fly me in.
You're so welcome. Anytime, Alan. So, I have a little bit of a bio that I would like to share with our listeners. Alan
Okay.
is AlanJohnHolmes.com. So, if you guys are looking for the website, that's what it's
Okay,
called.
hold up, Maria. I got to stop you there. My website is so old and so not up to date. I just want to say I'm working on it right now with a professional group.
Okay.
And I'm updating. So if anyone, you be welcome to go take a look. It's fine, but you're going to realize that it's just way out of date. Way out of date. But go ahead.
All right.
Sorry.
Okay, so here's a little bit about Alan. So, Alan John Holmes is a spiritual medium and a healer, and he's based in British Columbia. In 1980, Alan sat with Ruth Vickers, a renowned and gifted medium and healer, and she became a long-term mentor and dear friend, and her influence and teachings was invaluable. Alan has since become a reverend in the spiritualist church and has taken numerous courses in advanced mediumship and trance at the Arthur Finley College in England, a world center for spiritualism and psychic sciences. He has been blessed to have had the influence and encouragement of several noted mediums and tutors of the college. Alan is the founder of Spirit Lights Healing Center, which conducts an online healing meetings every Thursday evening, 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You also do Sunday nights, a night of meditation and mediumship, and that's 7 p.m. too, correct? Your
Yeah,
time.
yes, it is. It's 7 p.m. West Coast time. Yes.
So for those of you wondering, Eastern Standard Time is 10 o'clock at night. I
Right.
do try
Yeah.
to go, and
Right.
then sometimes I fall asleep, but I love your meditations. They are the best. And Alan also has a podcast, and it's called Let Spirit Speak, a spiritual and mediumship podcast with Alan John Holmes. And he has a YouTube channel. So I
Uh,
will have all of those links at the end of this podcast interview and on YouTube for you guys to click and to connect with Alan. So thank you, Alan, for joining us today.
oh, Maria, thank you. And I'm laughing because the YouTube videos are so for the people who know how to do these things well, when they look at them, they're going to think, "Oh, did a 4-year-old do this?
Yeah,
Who's this?"
that's okay. I don't know what I'm
It
doing
was done
either.
in my basement just before COVID, and it's all out there,
Yeah.
but yeah, we are changing things and things are moving up now, so that's all good.
I love that. So I have a question. Alan,
Yeah.
can you tell us, because you have it on your website, tell us about Ruth Vickers. Who is she?
Oh, Ruth was the most advanced spiritual being I have ever met on this planet. I'll just start there.
Yeah.
She had her first encounter with spiritualism through Ursula Roberts in 1970 at the Bayshore Inn in Vancouver. And it was a group of mediums that had come from England. And they brought spiritualism into Vancouver. There were 1,500 people in the gathering that night for the messages, the demonstration of mediumship. And Ruth, of course, was one of them. She went, obviously, because she was there. And Ursula Roberts stood up and said, I have a lady here, a young woman who took 2 tablets and killed herself. And she says to me to tell my sister who's here in the audience that she, the sister in spirit, could not completely go on because the sister here had not fully forgiven her. Ruth's sister had committed suicide with 2 tablets in Germany in the 1940, the early 40s, just as the war was getting started. And so Ruth had told me that the story, obviously. And that all day before the mediumship demonstration, Ruth had been thinking about her sister. And in her mind, she was aware that she had never fully forgiven her sister. So after the mediumship demonstration, Ruth went home and she said, Alan, I prayed for forgiveness and I let my sister go. It touches me still because this is so much the work that we have to do.
Yeah.
This is what our work is really for, in my opinion. And I've been blessed enough times in my own work to have had those moments when a loved one from the spirit world has shown up. One in particular was a lady. She had come for a reading. Her name was Peggy. I'll never forget her. Little English lady, about 75, but very, very crisp, clear, right from that generation, no nonsense, practical shoes, pearls, earrings, just typical British from that era. And she sat down, and I was very aware very quickly of a man from spirit. And I said, but he's standing at a distance, and he's waiting for you to say that it's okay for him to be here. And then she told me that there had been an affair. And I looked at her and I said, but you haven't fully forgiven him. That's why he's here. And she went on to say, you're right. And so we talked, and I said, love, if you don't forgive him now, if you don't do the work now, this is facing you now when you cross over, because he's come with the acknowledgement of the wrongdoing and what have you. Now it's your job. And she sat there quietly for a moment. And that's when she said, well, I've actually been thinking about that. She finally confessed. But what had happened was he came to me and he said the name Peg to me. So I said, he's calling you Peg. And she said, I hate that name. My name is Peggy. So it started with that. So right away, I thought, okay, there's something going on here, right? There's a little happening. But he's until the moment she said, I've been thinking about the path of forgiveness. Of course, I'm paraphrasing her words there. All of a sudden, I was very aware of him coming closer to me. It opened up the door. We
Yeah.
come in soul groups, and there's a lot with it that we have to do. We have to be aware of.
Mhm.
We have to understand that when we don't forgive one person or our actions affect another, somehow that goes through the soul group.
Mhm.
And we all go together to a degree, not
Yeah.
completely, but to a degree. So if you're in your life right now and there are people who have crossed over or people here that you need to sit down and do your work with for forgiveness, for heaven's sake, start now. Don't wait till your life review.
Yeah.
Do it now. Start now. Now's the time. Now's the time that you will grow. They will grow. There'll be freedom. Anyone who's ever, like Ruth did, in that moment, she said, Alan, I felt not only my sister, but I felt a little bit of spiritual release.
Yeah.
Now, Ruth was Chang Tzu's medium, and that was very much proved at the University of Hawaii. Just going back to that for a moment, if I may. Sorry if I'm interrupting you. But as I said before, I'm a Leo. Uh,
It's all good. It's all good. Keep
it's all
talking.
about me. Okay.
Keep talking.
No, I'm just waiting for the bolt of lightning now to hit me for saying that. Uh, so Ruth Ruth was 40 when she started. But I will say this, and I do say this with a lot of humility, I really do. But what brought Ruth and I together was the fact that when I met her and I was 18, 19, and we were talking, she was one of the first people that I talked to who we had had similar experiences as kids with spirit. And isn't that funny? Wow, I didn't expect that to happen today. Would you guys back off just a bit? That's too close. It's too close right now. Um,
Do you need Kleenex? Do you need water?
no,
Do you
I've
need
got Kleenex here. I'll have to go run and get it in a minute.
Okay.
But there was such a similarity. And so when she started meditating after her encounter with Ursula Roberts, about a year in, Ruth Cheng Su, this, as she called him, this Asian man showed up
Yeah.
and a little scholar's cap and his hands in his sleeves with this long robe. And he bowed to her in a vision while she was in meditation. And he then stood up and said, "My name is Sue." And of course, Ruth, being Taurus and German, who was now living in Canada because now she had obviously come to Canada after the war, she said, "Sue, that's a girl's name." And then he took his finger and he spelt it out, TZU. Well, Ruth, being who she was, said, "Okay, I have this lovely man from Spirit." And she never investigated. Of course, everyone has to remember this is long before the internet. I mean, to go and study something like this means you would have had to go to a library, you would have had to go through tons of books. It just wasn't at our fingertips to do. So beautifully, 5, 6, 7 years go on. Sue was working with Ruth. It's growing. The trance states get deeper, information comes. He starts telling her that he was born 350 years before Christ. He was a
Wow.
philosopher in China. About 1978 now, about a couple of years before I got there, one of her students brought to her the book called The Inner Chapters, which was one of the first books that was being published in the Western world to do, like at Phoenix and various bookstores at the time, to do with Taoism, because Sue was a Taoist. And at that moment, she started to realize who she had,
Hmm.
because the teachings that were coming through Ruth were, as she realized when she read some of the pages, were very similar to what was in the book. After that, she never read the book again because she said, "If I do that, I can't receive." Because now it's in her head, right?
Yeah.
And this is what we all have to be very careful of when we do trance, all of us, including myself. Be very careful not to overread some types of things because it can help you, but also work against you. There's a level of authenticity that can be taken away, and we must be guardians of that. We must hold ourselves to that. So I get there in 1980. I get there as if I'm special. Okay. But I'm a kid at that point. And I sat with her for a year, once every 2 weeks, $5 a session. Can you imagine, huh?
Where was she? In your neighborhood?
She was in Delta. Just I was in New West at the time in a really crappy apartment, and that's a whole nother story that we don't need to get into. But there it
But in
was.
British Columbia, like
And
in
British
your
Columbia. So
neighborhood.
yeah, so I
Okay.
would drive over with my little Suzuki Jeep on Wednesday nights and go in. And 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 I was just I couldn't believe it. Okay, I just got, because it goes with the story. So about that summer before I got to Ruth, I had one of my I've had a lot of psychic dreams, spirit dreams in my life, and this particular one, it was a flying dream, of course, and it was just beautiful. I was soaring, the sun, everything. It was just glowing. And I had many dreams about being in the halls of learning, right? That was also part of this whole connection. And I woke up from the dream and I knew all about the chakras. Never had to read a book. I get to Ruth's, we go downstairs, and as I'm walking down the stairs, she says to me, "Alan, have we ever met before?" And in my head, I'm like, "Of course not. I don't know you." I but I knew what was going to happen that night before I got there. I knew we were going to sit in a circle. I knew, wow. And and I'm sitting right across from her. There's about 10 of us. And all of a sudden, I'm just cold as ice. Spirit, just my hands go blue. I'm shaking. And I looked at her, and in that moment, I remembered. I knew her. And she started, and of course, passing the energy around the group, and she starts opening the chakras. And I just about jumped out of my chair because I knew before anybody in that group what this was about. It was just insane. And to this day, obviously, it lives inside of me. It's what I teach here in my house with people. It's what I try to get people to work with. And now, of course, people talk about chakras all the time now. But you have to remember back then, the spiritualists in particular never talked about the chakras. The only one they really talked about was the solar plexus because they could identify that through feeling that spirit and impressions and came through the solar plexus. But the rest of it, they didn't talk about because they saw it as a religious practice of the East. They never said it was wrong, but they didn't use it. But I can tell you, when you work with your thoughts, your prayers, the deeper prayers, when I am in my higher states, and we all, as mediums and people who do spiritual practices, we know when we are higher and we know when we're not. I don't care who you are. And if you don't know that about yourself, I would strongly suggest you learn. But when I'm in my higher states, my crown chakra is exploding. It's the only way I can describe it. And the pressure and the clarity of thoughts. I mean, there's different ways we hear spirit. Spirit, I can hear when it's been really powerful, the thoughts will come through my crown chakra and they have weight. I feel like they hit me almost. When it's clairaudience, for me, it's always in my left ear and the voice is here. And then, of course, there's the thoughts that go through the mind. These are all different ways. They're similar and I believe they're related, but they come through us differently because we are in different states at different times. Makes
Yes,
sense,
yes.
of course, right? When we get to that place that's so sacred, and this is the thing with Ruth that I resonated with so deeply. People who know me in this work, they like at Sunday services and such, they don't really see this part of me because in a Sunday service, you can't go there the same way. You just can't as a medium, as a speaker.
Yeah.
If you do, you can also lose the audience a bit. And also, you start sounding slightly, what's the polite word? I don't know if I can come up with a polite word, but you can come at it that you are you know more than everybody. You're more
Yeah.
elevated. It sounds a bit too esoteric and those things. And when in fact it should be incredibly practical. And this is always the problem.
Yeah.
We want to be elevated, but we also have to manifest it in physical form and through our personalities and our life and how all that's worked. And that's you are your mediumship. Val Williams said not just to me, but to a group of us once, and it's so very true. Your life makes your mediumship to a degree because it's part of your personality and how you work. There's truth in that. But when you shift into the deeper states, when you're shifting more into a trance or into what we call the gamma brain waves, which are the ones I believe more when I'm in that higher state, that happens to me at times, not always. It's all of that dies away, of course, right? It's pushed aside a bit. It's still there, but it's not the prominent. But with Ruth, to be chosen and to have the sole purpose to be Chang Tzu's medium, to be teaching Taoism really through through the master Su. I can't believe I was in that group as a student, and
Yeah.
at the time I was the youngest, which made me even feel more special.
You were just a teenager.
I
You're a
was a
baby
Yeah,
teenager.
well, I had lost everybody. My parents were dead. No great medium that I have ever met has been able to sit down and say, I just had the most wonderful life.
Mhm.
They've had a lot of love and good, and they've had a lot of the other. It's the
Yeah.
only thing that deepens us. It's the only thing that makes us question. So I just want to finish up with Ruth first because it's a great story. So that was 1980, 81. So Ruth now leaves her career, takes off. She is offered a position at the University of Hawaii
Wow.
with the professor, Dr. Michael Sasso, who was the professor of religion. And of course, Chang Su had said, excuse me, to Ruth that Taoism was not a religion, but of course, in the universities, they had to teach it under that. That's the only, I guess, category they could put it under.
Yeah.
So as they went on, the very first writing that came to Ruth's book, which is the Words of Wisdom by Chang Su, which came through Ruth while she was the 2 years in Hawaii, was for Professor Michael Sasso, and it was all about souls, the questioning of souls, of what we question in life, people who are questioning on a soul level. What's life all about? Why? How come? And that writing, as he said to her, answered all of his questions. Because why is it we keep asking the same questions? Because every generation asks the same questions. It's like we don't learn. And oh, I get shivers. Oh my gosh. And he it just answered his questions. And from that point on, it went. Ruth was teaching what they had to call it synergistic awareness at the university.
Oh,
And plus, she was doing readings and workshops. Ruth was not a demonstration medium. She hated it. When she saw the first SNU mediums do it in their churches, she didn't want to do it. She said, there's too much pressure. There's too much pressure to produce. But in a private reading and in her workshops, and I'm telling you right now, anyone who sat in her workshops when the vibration was high, people were just crying
yeah.
without even being addressed. It was like sitting in the presence of a guru who has that level of auric field and inner expansion of love and devotion to God.
Wow.
It just transformed you in her presence. And not always. I mean, she'd have to be in that state. When you saw Ruth and met her in a shop, she was Ruth, you know, which
Good.
was which was really great. But if you sat in those moments with her, it's never been with anybody else. And I have sat with a lot of mediums from
Yeah.
England. No one else has ever had that presence. And I'm hoping yet in my work, in my private groups, that one day I may get that moment. We've been close, I think, a couple of times,
Yeah.
but it hasn't been. And there's a place within inside ourselves, and this goes back to now meditation, if I may. Oh no, sorry, I got to finish up with this story about Cheng Su because this is the kicker. This was the kicker. So
Okay.
in 1997, 17 years later, I'm in Winnipeg, Manitoba, visiting my cousin. I was at a bookstore, I think it was Chapters, and I went to the self-help section, dawdle over, and there's a row of books, and one of the binders said, or the spine said, the Book of Chang Su, 1997 edition. So of course I take it off.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh. So I open it up and I did something I never do. I read the introduction. I never read introductions. I
Yeah.
go to whatever I want to get to. And as I opened the first, as I opened the first page and looked down, it says, there is only one Chinese character that we can assign time and place to. Lao Tzu may never have existed. Only Chang Tzu has a birth and place and family like that they could historically tie to. Chang Tzu was the founder of Taoism, not Lao Tzu. Now, just going back here in 1983, in trance with Dr. Michael Sasso, through Ruth, Chang Tzu said, I am the founder of Taoism, not Lao Tzu. A
Wow.
year or two before that, I was talking to Ruth on the phone. I said, you know what? I don't think Lao Tzu was the founder. I think it was Chang Tzu. I don't think Lao Tzu even was real. It might have been a character that Chang Tzu used because he did that a lot. he would come up with characters to tell a story. And the people who studied this were the scholars from the Beijing White Cloud Temple, the head temple of Taoism in Beijing. There was so much confirmation. So I phoned Ruth because Ruth didn't know this. Ruth did not know that this book was written. So I'm in Winnipeg. I phoned Whidbey Island because now she's living on Whidbey Island, right, in the States.
Yeah.
I'm like, Ruth, oh my God, you got to hear this. She starts chuckling. She says, well, Alan, with spirit, sometimes you've got to wait 10, 15, 20 years before you get the answer. It was just, and it's just so beautiful. It was so, and what I keep trying to tell people with this work, if it's really wonderful, wait.
Yeah.
Don't rush. It's the magic,
Yeah.
the what we call magic, the intelligence, right? Because it's really
Yeah.
intelligence. It's not magic, but to us it feels like magic sometimes because it is. It's a higher intelligence working with us. And it's just beautiful and it's so soul touching because the purity, and I keep telling this with people when they're watching somebody in trance. I see auras pretty well.
Yeah.
You can, particularly with a white wall or a light colored wall behind somebody, when they're doing trance, you can tell in seconds. And I don't mean this to be judgy in that way, but you can tell when it's going to be deeper or more powerful, and you can tell when it's a lighter trance because of the colors of the auric field. But also, if the spirit world is stepping in, you see it coming. You will see either a form or colors coming from the spirit world entering the auric field of the person sitting there. And you can tell by the colors, mostly to a degree, what the subject will generally be about because the colors have meaning, they have vibration. Purples and blues and deeper colors of the indigo level and higher are more philosophical, deep spiritual talks. Greens and pinks and all of that is more of of a kind of a healing quality or of a it's more of an exchange in this way. It's not the higher level. It's still wonderful. Of course, it's higher, obviously, but you can see these things happening and you can see the auric field expand. It's like when somebody stands up to do a demonstration of mediumship. You can see if you can watch it, the auric field will expand and you can tell when it's going to be a really great demo or where it's going to be not so much tonight. And I'm not going to say this, not mentioning names, because there's no need to mention names. This is a natural thing that happens. The last time I was at Stansted, there was two people coming up on the Sunday night service, right, to do their thing. And before it started, I looked over at the one demonstrator and the other demonstrator. There was a male, female. He looked tired when I came in. I thought, he looks tired tonight. But as I looked over at her, these spirit lights, three beautiful balls of light went off around her. I said, oh, she's going to have a good night. This is going to be
Yeah.
good. I looked at him, not much, and the auric field was kind of closed. I thought it's going to be difficult for him. And it's exactly what happened. And I also know this about myself. I can tell you when I'm going to have a great demo and when I'm not.
Yeah.
I can feel it. It's just around you. Now we can change our energy fields and we can pull it in and we can drop the energy from the root chakra and do all these things. But when you've got the link more with the spirit world and not. Now, the way you do it is through meditation. And this is the part that you wanted to talk to me about, really. So I better get there before this hour is up. So,
So I
right.
will say for
Yeah.
meditation, you do go very deep because I
Yes.
do enjoy the meditations on Sunday. And then about demonstrate, because I'm new to demonstrating now in person. So I started doing that
I'm thrilled for
and
you. Good.
I'm doing demonstrating in the churches and I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I feel like that's where my soul is calling me. But I think it's also important to acknowledge as mediums, we're human beings. We have good days, we have bad days.
Oh, yeah.
Things happen in our lives that throw us off. So even like doing a demonstration, like everybody, you go to work. If something happens within your home life or whatever, and it throws you off or upsets you, you're not going to do so good at work. So just remembering we're still human beings at the end of the day. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. And so, I know when you talk to inside the SNU and this in spiritualism, they're very clear about meditation and attunement and sitting in the power. There's very clear definitions. I agree with it and disagree to a point.
Yeah.
The moment you go into meditation, which really is know thyself, that's what meditation should really be. So what I do with the healing meditation, it's more like of a healing connecting to God and spirit to bring healing in. But it's we call it a meditation. Fine, fair enough.
Yeah.
But real meditation and sitting in your power, or I like to say your spirit presence or spirit self. The word power bothers me because it always can lead into ego. It's a very dangerous word in my humble opinion, which is not so humble. But
I think it's just the word. It's
it's not.
connecting to source.
It said it, yeah, okay.
Connecting to
So
source.
you're sitting in your awareness of your soul and your being.
Yeah.
Our job in that moment is to look so deeply into ourselves and see ourselves for all our authenticity, all our garbage,
Yeah.
all our own ability to lie and hate and be nasty. We need to look at that and feel it and
But it
understand that
takes time,
it takes
right?
time, and to understand that we need to know that about ourselves and to totally embrace that and not go, oh God, I don't want to do this. I'm not a bad person. Of course
Yeah.
we're also good.
Yeah.
And also to understand that other part, the good part, the light, the inner being of us that is trying to express the higher.
Yeah.
But we are in a physical body with relationships and we get resentful, dangerous. Don't hang on to it too long. Use it for a while. Anger is a great thing. If it's channeled right, it can push you to get onto things. It's great, but not if it's going to become resentful. Not if it's going to become what's the word I'm looking for? Vengeful. That's a different world, and that's not
I
a
think
world we get to.
I think too with emotions, depending on, because I almost feel like we're talking about traumas, the different types of traumas we have, then, if you need to seek a therapist or a counselor, and just gonna put it out
Absolutely.
there because like doing
Yeah.
this work on your own and you open up something and it maybe feel super overwhelming, then just putting that disclaimer out there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
See
Okay.
your
Sorry.
doctor,
Yeah,
see a
no, I
counselor.
and I agree. If you feel that's the right path for you, for God's sakes, go do it.
Yeah,
I I have never done that.
yeah.
I have sat down with myself and I have said to people, you'd never want to live between these two ears.
I've done therapy, I'm just putting it out
Because
there
I
for
have beaten
years.
myself into submission for things that I've done and said that I knew in the moment and felt it and and was just so mad
Yeah,
at myself. And then I've turned it up to God. And now this is where I feel it's very important. When you get to that point and you can know yourself well enough that you're starting to polish up a bit,
yeah,
or even before that, when you know you're not a perfect being, because you're
yeah,
not, and that you're not here to save the world, because I'm sorry, people sometimes come into this and they think, I had this experience. So Spirit's telling me that I'm the most divine thing that's possible. No, you're not. You're not. You have something's happened to you, and it means you have a path now with Spirit and God in a way. You're going to
yeah,
find that, but you got to take out of your head that you're anything more special than anybody else. And that's hard to do sometimes. It really is. I mean, when I was 18 and having those experiences, I was like, hey, really throw rose petals at my feet. Um, no,
Alan.
no, it can happen. And you've got to be
Yeah,
careful of that. But just last thing, you've got to give it up to God. And you've got to know that God already knew that about you. That's the
yeah,
beauty. God is just waiting for us. That divine intelligence is waiting for us to wake up to ourselves in our wholeness
yeah,
and understand it. Not that we have to like it, not
yeah,
that we have to say, this is the only way I am and I'm going to be, but to know that I'm struggling with this and I'm going to pursue this and grow from this, and it's going to make me deeper and broader and more loving and kind.
yeah,
Kindness is good, but the politeness, okay, politeness is good, but you got to be careful because kindness is real. Kindness means you understand, but the other things are more about just being empathetic, because that way people will think you can be liked a lot, and people have to be careful. That's a subtle ego thing. It's dangerous.
yeah,
But we give it up to God in submission.
yeah,
Moment we do that, that's when the light really comes into us. And that's when we tune with God. And that's when we sit in the power to attune with spirit. I say to people, we work with this, we go to God first, then you go to spirit, not the other way around. Although spirit and an experience with spirit may be the thing that pushes you there. That's what I mean, spirit
Yeah.
has a place with this. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what happened to me. I get it. But to really go to God and try and be as close to that highest divine consciousness that we can be, and know that you're going to fall away from it and you're going to go back and fall away. It's just
Yeah.
how it works because you're evolved. That's how we evolve. There's no
So,
other way.
yeah. So, Alan, I'm curious.
Yes.
When did your mediumship begin for you? Were you like a little kid when you had mediumistic abilities, or
Oh,
was it
no,
more when you
yeah.
were
No, no,
older?
I was 3 years old. I was 3 years old, and I woke up one night, and this man was standing at the end of my bed. It was who I later at 19, and it was 19. I'll tell you that one. What I realized was my guide. And as I woke up, there was this form. Maybe as I realize now, 5'2", 5'4", but it was just a form, and it was all lights, all
Yeah.
these beautiful lights, and around him was this glow of light. And as I looked around the room, all these hands were coming through the walls towards me, and I could
Yeah.
see them. And I realized now it was like ectoplasmic hands. And I always knew with his light and me, I'd be safe. And then from that point on, I started having premonitions. I would have a lot of dreams that came true all the time. Dream state was always incredibly active for me. I would hear voices. At the age of 4, I woke up and I knew what reincarnation was. I remember running around the house in Brandon, Manitoba, of all places, 1960. And I'm telling my parents, who my dad was a lovely man, farmer, right, had been a farmer before I was born in 1916, left school at in when he was in grade 7 because of
Yeah.
the Dust Bowl, just trying to survive. My mother, it was just these stories, they both had false teeth by the time they were 16, went on and on and
Yeah.
on. And I'm trying to tell them about reincarnation. Well, we've all been here before. I'm just older than you. And I remember saying that phrase, but things would come and go. Like it didn't always stay. Like I would have times where nothing would happen, and then I'd have a rash of things.
Yeah.
Around the same time at Christmas, I woke up Christmas morning, 2 o'clock, and I went running into our living room, and the Christmas tree was there, and standing beside the Christmas tree was this man. And in my head, I knew not to speak. Don't ask me why, but I knew not to speak because I knew it would break the vibration. In my head, I said, "Who are you?" And he looked at me and he said, "I'm St. Nicholas." Oh, God, I don't know why this is happening today like this. I just think it's all just pouring here. And my sister, who was 3 years older, was standing. I turned around and she was standing there, which was unusual for Shelley. And I said, "Did you see him?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, I saw him." So I go running into my parents' bedroom. I'm on top of my dad, jumping up and down. "Wake up!" Kind of like a husky dog doing
Yeah.
that. And, and he said, "Oh," and I said, "Dad, there's a man in the room. His name is St. Nicholas." Shelley saw him too. And she said, and this was the moment,
Yeah.
I didn't see anybody. At that moment.
I love
So
it.
yeah, so every ounce of Irish blood from my mother came up in my gene pool, and I looked at her and my parents because my dad said, "Son, just go back to bed. There's nobody there." I thought, that's it. And I actually never did. For like 10 years after that, I didn't tell them anything. I wouldn't say a word. I thought, you could go ahead. It's like,
Oh my God, Alan, I
you know,
didn't know that.
but I've always had this thing about trust.
Mhm.
I'm much better now. I mean, that's the kid obvious. Hopefully I am.
Yeah.
But it hurt me so much because it was so real, and I couldn't understand why they couldn't see it, why they couldn't hear, why. And I was never good in school. Okay, Maria, full disclosure, I did terrible in school. I failed grade 4. They put me back. They marched me back in front of the grade 4 class back to grade 3.
But Alan, you did go on to become a high school
Oh,
teacher.
the
So
irony of that moment is not lost on me. Trust me. And
yeah.
and it was and very successfully with my music program, and I will get to that. But it was just this. It was And when that happened, I couldn't understand how people who were so smart, like who could get all these concepts off the board and read and do all this stuff that I was frantically studying or struggling with and couldn't do, could not do this. Like
Yeah.
to me, I thought you're the smart people. You can do this, and what's going on with this? Like, they sit in class and they say smart things, and I'd be sitting there
Yeah.
going, I had a dream last night. It's going to snow in 2 weeks. You know, I'd be telling them there's snow coming. Yeah, whatever, Alan. And then some kids would say, Alan, how did you know it was going to snow? Like, how did you know last week? You said it'd be this week. Well, I had this dream and it sort of happened. That's weird. You're weird. It's just,
So would you say you're very clairvoyant?
oh, I don't know what I am anymore.
Oh, so a
Uh,
little bit of everything now.
I, I,
Because you
I,
see a lot.
I will. I also feel the personalities very strongly. Like I had somebody say that to me once, but it's always different, Maria. I mean, this is what I don't understand. And you just brought up a very
Tell
interesting
me,
thing
Alan.
that
What
I
don't you
thought, no, that I
understand?
was thinking about today because I'm working on my webpage, right, which is a total mess from years ago. And I'm working with somebody that a friend of ours got me involved with to look at because this is a company. These guys are pros, and they're asking me questions. I'm going, I don't know how to define myself. God, I know how to do it.
Yeah.
And I've been lucky enough to have an experience in every way in this. I have, and
Yeah.
I'm very blessed for that. I was a dumb kid in school, but man, I had this stuff. So way to go. Thanks for
Yeah.
making me hang in there, guys, because I wasn't going to for a while. Um, an instrument. If we are really doing God, and I'm going to go back to the idea, the concept of God. I love God.
Yeah.
Jesus, I love Buddha. Don't ever get me wrong on that. If you're an instrument, a real instrument, anything is possible to come through you. It's about the practice of our attunement, our devotion. This is why many of us that come into this work, whether in a formal religious way or
Mhm.
more of a kind of meditative spiritual, I don't want to say that the religious isn't spiritual, it can be very spiritual. I'm not saying it can't, but the doctrine can get in the way, just like with other things that we know, certain
Yeah.
ideas in the box. But if your devotion is to the divine, trust that you can be used in any possible way. You will have great healings come through you. I've had that. You will have mediumship. You will have all the gifts of spirit work through you when it is required.
Yeah.
That's the difference. And you as the instrument have to learn to feel when it's right and to trust when it's right. Now, that's not to say, I am a medium. I do readings, I do healings, but I
Yeah.
also know. So all through my life, sorry, just to show it this way, um, my there was a family member who had a very bad heart in a bad condition. They were having a reunion, not a reunion, sorry, a wedding anniversary. It was their 40th wedding anniversary. It was my wife's uncle. We went. We walk in the front door. His name was Ronnie. I look over at Ronnie. I'm waving hi. In my left ear, I hear Ronnie will be dead before Christmas. This is November 10th. So I take Jenny outside. I said, you got to come with me, honey. I said, this is what I heard. She says, you're not going to tell anybody. I said, Jenny, we've been married for 15. What? Do you think I'm going to?
Yeah.
What ended up happening through that scenario was we took care of his wife, Elise, Jenny's aunt, who we loved. We were the ones who did it. Nobody else in the family. She stayed with us. We helped her arrange the funeral. Do you see what I mean that happened? Died? You know when he died? December 24th at 9 o'clock in the evening. And the day before that, I was tinkering on the piano, and Jenny's father, who had passed, walked in the room. And I looked at Harry in my mind, okay, and I said, what are you doing here? I said, by the way, Ron, the day after tomorrow is Christmas. Ronnie's still here. And he said again to me, Ronnie will be dead before Christmas. And he died at 9 o'clock at night at the dinner table, just
Yeah.
collapsed, had a total cardiac arrest done. And that fast.
Like, what are you processing inside your head? I'm just curious because you're like spirit's giving you the messages, right?
Yeah.
Then you're there and you're witnessing it all come to, are you like freaking out? Or are you telling people like,
No, I've had it enough times in my life that it doesn't freak me out. It always makes me feel incredibly humbled
yeah,
that I might have a part to play, like to help or do something. But here's the lesson of the soul and spirit. So as you know, in 2018, my wife died.
yeah,
So God and I were not in a good place.
yeah.
Yeah.
You're angry. That's
I
okay.
was I was then. I'm not now. Now I'm just sorry that I was ever angry. I
Yeah,
had a long time. Though God and I have had coming together again, and my guides too, because I had had so many different experiences with that type of thing with Ronnie, with other people and births and everything else.
yeah,
And the only hint I had for Jenny was in 2015 when I was cutting the grass, and it was late August. She came out onto the deck and she said, "Would you like a cup of tea?" Of course, British background. Of course, I want a cup of tea. And she was very British. And I looked up at her and I stopped and I said, "You need to go and get a hysterectomy." Just came out of me. And she said, "What?" I said, "You need a hysterectomy." And then the rest followed. I said, your friend Yana, who survived, by the way, stage 4 ovarian cancer. It's a really bizarre story, but she did. I said, "You both had really bad cycles as girls." And as we figured out, it was probably endometriosis that Jenny and both Yana had had. Well, that's the moment you have that, there's a 40% increase in either ovarian or uterine cancer. And of course, that's where Jenny's started, was in the uterus.
yeah.
So I said, "You need to get an MRI and get this done." Well, Jenny was British.
Mhm.
As we mentioned earlier, it was interesting you brought that up. We hold our cards here. We don't
Yeah,
display everything. So she started having certain types of symptoms over a period of time and would not go for an MRI because she did not want to go in the tube. And then she said, "Well, I can't do it because this is BC and you have to go on a list and wait." And I said, "No, we can pay the $1,000 and we're going to get this done." Wouldn't do it. And as it turned out, by the time they found it, it had gone from the womb to the liver to the lungs to the kidney. And it was leiomyosarcoma. So the part that I was upset about, of course, obviously, was why did you not tell me more? Well, the path of the soul is the path of the soul of, and this is for all of us.
yeah,
Ruth said to me when I was 18, 19, she said, "Alan, you have a lovely gift, but remember, you are like everybody else."
yeah,
And she said, "The people you love the most are usually the people you can help the least." That was wisdom.
yeah,
That was deep, profound, not silly, just think positive. Oh, no, no, it doesn't matter, stuff. No, no, this was deep, profound, spiritual soul wisdom from a very, very, I'm going to say old, but experienced soul who had been here many, many times. And those words rang through my being for months while Jenny was going through that.
yeah,
But yeah, here it is. And we need, if we're going to be great instruments for God, we need to be broken many, many times. We need to be brought to our knees enough that we know to go to our knees to ask and then to desire to be of service. Because it can't be just flippant. If that's what it is, I don't want to do this. I don't.
yeah,
It's got to be deeper. And that doesn't mean every reading and everything is super profound all the time. It's not, obviously. But within ourselves, within us as the instrument, and I won't use the word channel, and I'll tell you why. Because Chang Tzu said, here we go back to Chang Tzu. He said to Ruth, years ago because Jay Knight, I don't remember her from the 1980s and 90s, and she had this huge following. And Ruth and I both said, something isn't right here. Something's gone off, and it had. It was obvious to us. And Ruth said to Chang Su one day, what's going on? It's not the same. She's not as good as she was. Like it was things you could tell it was ego and it was starting to fall. And Chang Su answered her this way. If gold and copper are melted and mixed together, who can tell the difference?
Yeah.
Beautiful. When Ruth told me, I just thought, of course, that's brilliant. This is we need to learn to listen from the soul level. Channels, generally, the word channeler means kind of one thing. I
Yeah.
channel this. Really? That's all? If
Yeah.
you're an instrument, you've got to think, I'm an instrument. Anything is possible through you. The most incredible healing, maybe it only happens once through you, but you get chosen in that moment. And somebody comes to you and you put your hands and the power flows through you. You put your hands on them and they're cured of their cancer in 5 minutes. That happened to Ruth several times, by the way, with people with severe illnesses. And oh my God, it's just, and I remember holding her hands in circle once when her Indian guide, the power that came through her, the turning, the vibration, that it was like an electrical current, like you would feel coming out of a socket,
Yeah.
and the heat. And then she turned to me and smiled. She said, well, her guide's name was White Cloud. And she said, welcome to White Cloud. And it was just the fact that the vibration of the group that night was so in harmony that he was able to step in to the group. And think about what I just said there. I forgot about this part of the story. Ruth's Indian guide's name was White Cloud, who had introduced himself somewhere in the mid 70s to her. What was the Beijing temple called? The head temple in in China, the name is White Cloud Temple.
Oh, interesting.
Work that one out. I mean, the
I had a
the dot.
question,
Yeah.
Alan, because like you
Sorry.
were talking about like your wife and her passing. Has she ever come through to you in a mediumship demonstration or reading?
Okay. Only once, but
Yeah.
she come to me in dream state. I'll tell you one. I'll talk about a couple of dream states, but I'll tell you when she came through. The last time I went to, no, the second to last time I went to Stansted. I forget the medium in our tutor's last name. She's from Holland, Josie. I
Okay.
love Josie. So it's the first night, right? It's the Saturday night. So they get up there and they're doing mediumship. Paul's there, and it was a big crowd. It was really good. Really did enjoy that week. And Josie's sitting there, and there's like 200 people. And
Yeah.
all of a sudden, on my right side, all the shivers come in and go down. And I thought, just a second, oh, I never get messages. No one ever gives me messages. I don't get messages. And so I'm sitting there and I thought, that was interesting. And I thought, I think it's Jenny. Now you have to understand, my wife was very private, even though she was an opera singer.
Oh, she was an
Gorgeous.
opera
Oh,
singer? Wow.
Jenny's voice was gorgeous. Anyone who ever heard my wife sing would look at me later. People who didn't even like opera and say, why isn't she famous? I said, don't ask me. I've worked on it. I can't do any more than I've done. Okay. I'm dropping this one. And Josie stands up. She was the second or third medium to work. And she said, I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen. All I can tell you is that I have a lady here. She says to me, Cirque Soleil. And then she talks about going to a country where there are mountains and getting to the top of the mountain where all the gold was. 2012, Jenny and I went to a Cirque Soleil matinee. We're sitting there, and I looked at Jenny in the intermission and said, "Can we leave? This is really bad." And it was bad. It was a matinee. I think they were exhausted, right? I mean,
Yeah.
it just wasn't working. And I said, "It's sunny July day. Let's go for a coffee." Okay, so we left. It was a standing joke between us that we were probably two were the only people in the entire planet that has ever walked out of a Cirque du Soleil. And so when she said, I have a lady here, and all she says is Cirque du Soleil. So I'm sitting there. So I make Josie fight a bit for it. I make her say it 3 times because I'm waiting for somebody else in the audience to put up their hand. But I'm thinking, well, this
You're
isn't.
not taking it.
I did. Just
Oh,
a second. I'm getting to. Let me tell my stories. So I, I'm waiting because I'm thinking, well, somebody else, just in case. I didn't want to jump in because you know what it's like to deal with people who are the hogs, the message hogs. They're trying to be helpful, but they actually can sometimes get in the way. So I'm sitting there and nobody puts up their hand. So by the third time I put my hands and says, Josie, you're with me. I know exactly who that is. You don't have to tell me. I know. And just saying that, there's such evidence in that. I'll tell you later. I said, the mountain I will talk about and the gold. Because in 2017, the summer of 2017, for the second time, I took 100 kids to Vienna, my choir,
yeah.
non-auditioned 15 to 17-year-olds, 100 of them. We were singing pieces a cappella that were 12, 16-part harmony. The gold was the fact that we won the gold medal.
Oh, wow.
We won. And the reason why I say it was a youth competition, because youth means up to the age of 24. So we were singing against these semi adult groups, some of them.
Yeah.
And my wife was watching the adjudicators, and we were singing in the Golden Hall in Vienna. Anyone who's ever been there understands what that is. You'll know what I mean. It's just, oh my God, you just said that. Okay.
So, does your
I
wife
live in
help
the
train?
Backford. Sorry?
Did she help train because she was a singer, or that was just
Oh,
you?
I had her come in.
Okay.
I did most of the vocal work myself, but for certain things with Jenny, I'd get her to work particularly with young sopranos because they really don't understand resonance. They don't really understand head voice and how to make it work. They're all, hey, and it's just not what you want. And it's this peppy little sound. And the boys, though, I did a lot of work with, and the altos. And I mean, I knew how to do it, but it was good for them to hear a really comfortable soprano that could wail off a high C and B flat and do it with
Yeah.
just simple, ladies. This is how you do it, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it gave them the psychology.
Yeah.
But when my wife said, I just have to finish that part. She said the adjudicators were there, and when we sang about 3 notes, my group, they put down their pencils and sat back, didn't write down another thing, and that's not what adjudicators do. It was a huge compliment, and it was just I love these kids, and it took
Yeah.
years building that program. So from 2008 to 2018, I did almost none of this work. I
Like
was
the
in a music
mediumship, you
program,
mean?
none of it. I
Oh,
would do a Sunday service once every 6 months. I would
yeah.
do a Friday night dem at a church once every 6 months. I was full on 180% into that program.
Yeah.
I had classes at 6:30 in the morning. I would be there till 7, 8 o'clock at night sometimes because a lot of our classes, they were so big, they were off the schedule. They couldn't put them on. And at that point, okay, so before 2008 and 2007, I went to Iceland. I
Yeah.
was asked to go there. It was the best 2 weeks of my mediumship, my work. It was wonderful. It's where on my card is the phrase, forgiveness is the greatest karmic release that one can give to oneself or to another. That that is when that happened, is when I was in a deep state for the board of directors doing private circle for them because board of directors always like that. Who
Yeah.
bring you over, you try, and I'm thinking, I don't know what I'm going to get tonight. I might get nothing. These guys are going to hate me. And
Yeah.
my guide stepped right in. The shivers went through me. It just went all down my side. And I heard that. The reason why I remember it so well is I heard it out here, and then I went into a deeper state. It was just fantastic.
Did you find?
So I
I'm
came
curious.
sorry, I came back from that, and then the music program started, and I thought that was great. How do I make a living?
Oh, with
And
mediumship? I am
yeah,
wondering, Ellen, like
yeah,
after your wife passed, did you still do mediumship or did you
I
stop or
I
what
struggled
was that journey like?
for about a year. I struggled
Yeah.
emotionally. I could barely get out of bed. I have lost a lot of people. I've been through a lot of my life. This was the one that did me in. Let me put it
Yeah.
that way. So, oddly enough, Nicole down in White Rock here, who has a center, not in White Rock, sorry, Crescent Beach. One night I took myself to Crescent Beach. It was a July night, August. Beautiful sunset, warm, beautiful. COVID, so the place is packed with people outside and everything. I'm lying on a bench and I'm looking into the light of the setting. The sun's just set, so it's still very bright.
Yeah.
All the people walking past me are in a silhouette, so I can't see their faces. Not at
Yeah.
all. I'm looking up, the first stars are coming up, and I'm thinking, I just want to be here, be alone. Nobody talk to me, get away from me. I'm trying to
Yeah.
get right with God. And all of a sudden I hear this voice, Alan? And it was Nicole.
Yeah.
And she said, "How I heard about your wife, blah, blah, blah." And I thought, okay, fine, you heard about my wife, whatever. Okay, just leave me alone. It was good
Yeah.
to see you. Bye. And she says, no, no, I want you, she was showing me her center. She wanted me to show me. So I went down and saw the center. It was just down the beach a bit to the water. Very nice. And she says, you need to come and do a demonstration here. And the thought went through my head, say yes. It was like that loud.
Yeah.
And I said, okay. And it went really well. And that brought me into it. But it was like this the whole time. I do some work. You know what it's
Yeah.
like when it's good, you're up here, and then when you come down. Well, I wouldn't just come down, I would go right back to, I don't want to get out of bed. It's been since last year that thing changed. Even with Dreams with Jenny, it helped, but it was just, I would wake up and love it, but then, you know,
You miss her.
about June of 2023, I had this dream where I was standing on this emerald green field. And in the distance was this glowing building of light. And suddenly I flew up, but not this way. I flew up this way and
Yeah.
flew like this, very vertically, towards the building. I flew into the building. I'm it's all glowing. You know how these things are. It's all glowing and just radiating light. And all around me, below me, as I'm flying towards the center of a pool in the center of this building, are all these people doing various types of spiritual work, whether it's healing, whether they're doing philosophy, whether they're doing mediumship, whatever it was
Yeah.
all happening. And I flew in and I flew into just to the center of the pool. And down below me, deep in the water, which was perfectly clear, was this amethyst. And I
Yeah.
held out my hand and the amethyst flew up into my hand and I placed it into my heart chakra. From then on, it's been getting much better.
Oh.
And yeah, and every day it's stronger. And every day I want to do more again in this work. And so it was interesting when you first got a hold of me. I thought, oh, I don't know. I was still having those days. And yet now it's like, okay, I want to do more now.
Yeah.
And I want to go deeper and
Yeah.
the desire and to do what I can for others and all I mean that's the whole point. We all these experiences are as hard as they are, they're just so precious on a soul level. I know when I get to the spirit world, they're going to say, "Oh, you figured it out." You know, I'm sure I've got some rabbi around me sometimes because I just feel that way. But I'm sure they're going to say, "You got it, right?
Yeah.
Way to go. You
I
did you didn't fully give up." Because it is about that. If you're going to do this work, you need staying power, man. And it's
Yeah.
not about the gift. Really, it's not about if you're supernatural or have a supernatural gift in a way that just it's about it's not about the gift, it's about the doing, going after it. And not just, oh, I'm taking this course and that course and this course. It's about this work.
the inside work.
My wife's funeral was 3 weeks after she died. And it had to be because my students wanted to be there. We had to find a day when everyone could be there. It was a Saturday. 600 people were at that funeral. I conducted the choir. I carried my wife's ashes up to the front of the church. Christ Church Cathedral, Vancouver. Anybody who knows that area will know what I'm talking about. Beautiful church. I did the eulogy. I didn't cry a tear. I stood in line from like 11:30 till 4:30, hugging and greeting every single person.
Yeah.
And I did it for several reasons. One, because I just have too much pride. The the other one was my father had always said to us, a man with a grade 7 education, son, you always walk with your head up and your back straight. That's what I have to do. And I have to be the strongest person at the funeral. And I always have been. Like whenever in my world, whenever the bomb goes off, I'm the guy.
Yeah.
I cry later. I have my breakdown later. But through the whole thing, everything's fine, man. We're going to get through this. It's all going to be good. And we're going to
Yeah.
do this. And here's the plan. And let's get clear. I'm great in that. It's after, right? Like a lot of us do, right? It's just that kicks in. So I hope in telling this, people realize the deepening that we are given, the gift and the deepening that we are given through our pain and suffering, and how beautiful that gift is. The diamond gets so crushed it shines, and it's
Yeah.
bright as day, right? It's glorious.
Yeah.
And if
I
we miss that, we've missed the point of this life.
yeah.
Sorry.
That's okay. We're coming to the end of our time, but I do want to say thank you so much for sharing your story, and I hope it helps other people that have lost loved ones because it takes one story, right? Someone shares a story and then you hear it and you're like, and then they can begin their healing and knowing, hey, look, Alan survived. I'll be okay. Because sometimes just, I know for myself, when I hear stories, it's like, and I'm going through stuff, and I'm like, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one that feels that way. Because that's a big thing. So I want to say thank you
I,
so
and
much for sharing that.
And I want to jump in on the end of that just for you because you're right. Because I have listened to other people's stories online and it has saved my life. The
Yeah.
near-death experience stories, and I want to say that very quickly to everyone out there. If you are suffering in that sort of way, if you've lost somebody or close to it, or they're in a coma, or they've got whatever and they're in a hospital bed and can't move, whatever it is, look up the near-death experience stories because I'll tell you, they will give you hope. And you just know that everything is fine. They are fine. You know, they may go over with some problems, they will evolve. No soul is totally lost forever. That
Yeah.
we know that. You might be in a lower level for a while, but you're going to rise up. Every soul will
Yeah.
eventually. But
And
do
then
that for yourself because it will give you great hope.
thank you. And for those that may be struggling and having challenges, seek counseling, talk
Sure.
to friends, talk to your
Absolutely.
doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't do it alone. Do not do
Yeah.
it alone. Reach
Right.
out to somebody for sure.
Absolutely. And also don't be afraid for it to manifest with you the way it's going to because you're a different individual. That's okay. Not everyone's the same.
It's okay to
So
cry. It's
you
okay
you
to
know
cry.
if you need to go to a gym and take up a punching bag and beat the heck out of it because of what you're going through, well, that's the place to do it. It's a punching bag. That's the one you want to use, not your wall.
Yeah.
Do that's okay. And I want to because I got told from, some people, oh, you just need to go to a grief session, da 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 da. Okay, and I already knew what they were going to say. So for me, it wasn't really going to work. And I'm not that type. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I'm so I had to do it a different way. But I did talk to the right people in my life. I found the right people. And as you say, if you need that, go seek it out because there are some very good counselors out there.
Yeah.
And they will be able to maybe give some perspective and sort of say, hey, this is your process. Let's walk through it. Let's give it time. From my perspective, what I've learned in this is time doesn't heal, but the edges of the grief and the pain soften.
Mm.
That's what happens.
Yeah.
I don't think it fully heals in the way that we think it should heal. Oh, I'm ready to go to Disneyland. Everything's fine. And if it did heal like that, then what was the point of the experience?
Yeah.
You, look at the gift of it too. There's a gift in it, as believe me, as much as you're gonna hate it,
Yeah.
there is a gift in it, and it's worthy of your being, and you are worthy of it, and you will be even more worthy. But as Maria said, talk to the right people, find somebody. Don't sit there and think you're alone forever. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay.
And also reminding people, do you, how whatever that looks like in your grief journey, because I have interviewed other mediums that have come on my podcast where they've been encouraged to go one way and it didn't feel right for them. So do you, whatever that feels like for you, but do reach out to somebody so you're not alone. And with that, I want to say thank you so much, Alan, for spending this time with us. You know what? I will
I'm just
say
up and down
this.
like a yo-yo.
I have seen orbs flying by your head.
Really?
The interview. So it's been very cool. But thank you everybody for listening.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, Alan.
Bye.